We are an economic think tank for the proverbial green economy. So what we do is focus on a niche of economy called environmental economy that specifically looks at the transactions and markets behind sustainability, behind low carbon pathways, and generally what we label as green development. We're really data-centric. So Dubai Carbon calculates annually CO2 emissions of different countries. At the moment we have the greenhouse gas inventories of the UAE, Iraq, Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, and we are adding countries on regular basis. And what we are able to drive is from this data there are efficiencies to be made and there are success stories to be replicated. So essentially we cross-reference data both geographically, by industry, by sector, by population, by income, by all sorts of KPIs in order to identify who's doing what in a way which is commercially successful. Dubai Carbon itself is an agent of change, so we have the most difficult task to convince public and private sector to change the way they do things on their everyday basis, which is per se dramatic, because nobody wishes to go out of their comfort zone. But when we have reports such as the IPCC special report on the 1.5 and 2 degrees pathways, we are able to approach both segments, both public and private, with reinvigorated force. The UAE has a very strong sense of business excellence. In doing so, they're always looking at ways to improve their business models, their business practices, and they become resource efficient in their DNA per se. Take for example DEWA. DEWA implemented a paperless regime. Now, it sounds so said and done and told, but the ability for a utility that touches 700,000 families' accounts to go completely paperless is a mammoth task. This means that both internally and externally there is no longer paper being handled, there are no longer printers within DEWA's offices to print, there is no paper being purchased even. But this, what actually translates to, is one resource which is no longer required, no longer a liability for our environment. What we do, we can take commercially viable processes, commercially viable projects, and explain them in both numerical, quantitative, and qualitative approaches to other stakeholders in order to replicate those. And we are able to quantify both economically, environmentally and socially the benefits that are derived from the different activities to allow them, to help them take a decision sooner rather than later. The rate of adoption has been exponential. The UAE and Dubai in the forefront has for 3 years in a row challenged the world global tariff and achieved an ever decreasing rate, to the point that the latest rate of 2.4 cents was even challenged by Cristina Figueres to target a 1 cent per kilowatt hour rate by 2030. That would be fantastic, because it would bring supply side of renewables mainstream and be an agent of poverty eradication. Now, when we move to distributed solar, and that's where Dubai Carbon plays an active role, it's a completely different ball game. First and foremost, there is a lot of willingness to participate, but there are not enough market participants just yet. So DEWA has launched a policy labeled Shams Dubai, where contractors and consultants are registered, but they also make sure that the products utilized are registered. This is relatively recent, and ever since this has kicked off, they have a pipeline of 200 plus megawatts of distributed solar. In terms of residential, we have worked with entities to facilitate the penetration through a program that we call SAFACAT. Let's call it, for ease of understanding, the UAE Green Deal. Essentially, what we've looked upon is a standardized kit that can be replicated and installed in most villa installation. Now, this is not your perfect solution. By all means, it's not a silver bullet, because we target 100% of the baseload consumption, and we try to offset 20–30% of the peak. This results in a kit of about 4.5 kilowatts that is installed. At the moment is installed in about just shy of 1,000 installations, but is more cost effective with a return on investment of about 4.5 years and a concept of portability. Now, I don't mean that you just carry it around with you everywhere you go, but if you are a tenant, you can actually dismount it and apply it into your next residential settings, in case you cannot leave it behind, or in case it's not your own home. Well, last year we had 0 installation. In a period of about 6 months, we have 1,000 kits installed. I would say the market is quickly taking advantage. We cannot have them ready enough that they're already gone. Waste to energy is a completely different ball game. It's not something that, for example, I would see overnight being implemented. What I know is that Dubai municipality is actively pursuing a waste to energy project, which will add a very profound success to the management of waste and production of renewables. But in terms of waste per se, it's still a resource. What I really foresee is our ability to reduce the amount of waste created at source rather than just burning it, which, even though it does provide an element of electricity, of energy at the back end, is still equivalent to swiping under the rug, a problem that we as individuals produce. So the ability for us to be more resource conscious is at the base of solving the problem, rather than expecting governments to just burn it up on our behalf so that we can feel a little bit better about it. We partnered with an Italian solar developer that was not present in the region, which has committed to come not only in the UAE and set up a proper capacity, but also be part of an investment methodology to facilitate the penetration of distributed solar. Now, what we've seen as Dubai Carbon is there is a large appetite for very large projects, but nobody takes care of the smaller projects, which are plentiful and completely not looked after. So with our partners, PLC, SPA, we're actually grabbing all these smaller projects so that we can aggregate them in portfolios that the market desires to look after. Me and you, we are barriers. We are reluctant to change. We are individuals, we are lazy. And our ability to make decisions that bring us outside our comfort zone are the major barrier. We just launched an hour ago the electric vehicle program, and the only way we can make the electric vehicle program work is by incentivizing users to make the switch. But at the end of the day, people have to assess that buying a car, buying a solar rooftop, buying energy efficiency is not just a capex, it's not an upfront cost. It's a cost of operation as well as the cost of purchasing. So if you compare apples to apples, you will have a vehicle and running cost over, say, 3 years compared to the same electric vehicle. And that's where you see, for example, the efficiency in all those environmentally friendly technologies and services. So a vehicle might cost you 20% more upfront, but it costs you up to 80–90% less per year to run. A solar rooftop might cost you upfront considerably, but then it does not cost you anything to maintain for a period of 20 years. Only the cleaning, which is a negligible amount. If you look at energy efficiencies, return on investment of things such as bulbs is 3 to 3.5 months. Or HVAC, upgrading to energy efficiency air conditioning, their investment can be recovered in a year and a half at most. So people just have to educate themselves, which brings them first and foremost an economic benefit, but also improves the quality of life, because all of a sudden you're surrounded by better technology, more profound services that actually look after your well-being and your happiness in general. Again, we do have sustainability at heart, and we're always keen to learn more what everyone else is doing, so that we can create a community of sustainability professionals that should be incentivized, should receive a spotlight for their efforts and how this can be replicated for sustainable development.